fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to connect.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Little Sunday morning edition, Air Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Air Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. We just have ourselves, people, such a jam-packed show. First of all, just Matt, get in the chat. Does the mic sound good? Because we got a nice audience, and we got a lot to talk about. Okay, so here's what we're going to discuss. We're going to open college football portal officially off the rocker. LSU, Indiana making moves. What's going on with Sam Leavitt in Kentucky? Oh, by the way, Cam Coleman, Indiana. There are so many storylines. I don't know how we're going to get to all of them, including, by the way, is Ty Simpson going to enter the portal? We'll discuss that. And then from there, it's pretty straightforward. A monster college hoops slate and recap. Arkansas, the Big Pig invasion is here, baby. They take care of Tennessee. We'll talk a little bit about Alabama. Just BTA on Kentucky. Nate Oates, by the way, just body bagging Mark Pope after that game. We'll talk about some of the other results. A nice win for BYU. St. John's, I think it's officially time to worry. And the rest of a busy Saturday in the world of college hoops. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. Make sure that you are subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. If my math is correct, we are about 150 subs away. Or no. I guess it'd be 1,050 subs away from 70,000 subscribers. It is insane to me how much we're growing, but we cannot do it without you. So make sure you're subscribed. Also, you can find the podcast on Apple and Spotify. Should mention, if you want to be a friend, we have thrown in my Fox Sports Radio podcast. Just download it. Let the Fox Sports Radio bosses know that Torres has people that love his show. We would appreciate your support. You know who else's support? We appreciate our friends, the official hotel and casino partner of the Aaron Torres Pod, Circa Sportsbook and Circa Casino. Okay, so I've told you quite a few times now, when you're in Vegas, best place to watch games is that beautiful Circa Sportsbook, Fremont Street. Best place in Vegas to watch games. It's awesome. It's incredible, hospitable. You can go out to Stadium Swim. It's unbelievable. But what I will also say is this. I know a lot of you can't make it out to Vegas. And so what you need to do when you can't make it to Vegas, shoot over to the brand new Circa Sportsbook at the Mint. You can see it on the screen there. That is right. Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. Okay, so all the great amenities of the Vegas property, they have come to the East Coast. They have come to the Mint. Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. It's about 40 or so minutes from Nashville. I did the drive myself. Door to door, it's like 39 minutes. You can do it too if you're in Nashville, if you're around Nashville. It's actually the closest physical sports book, brick and mortar sports book to Nashville, about 20 minutes from Bowling Green, Kentucky. This is the place you need to go to watch games. The brand new Circa Sportsbook, Mint Kentucky Downs in beautiful Franklin, Kentucky. With that said, it's a busy Sunday in the world of sports. No more time to waste. So people, let's get to it. Let's get to the topic of the day. It was a busy weekend in the world of college hoops. But before we get to hoops, we got to talk college football transfer portal because it is humming. Okay, so basically, if you missed it, we did a Friday show recapping the college football playoff, but really setting the stage for what the portal is going to look like. Well, I am here to tell you the portal is open. The chaos, as Seinfeld once said, it is real. And it is spectacular, baby. So let's go ahead and dive into everything that happened on the weekend. I will give the premise, or I will give the caveat, I guess would be the right word, that I always do. We are recording here at 11:11 Eastern time. Make a wish, okay? But the portal moves fast. I've had people tell me a day in the portal world is like 2 weeks in the real world. Stuff is going to change. If you see something in this segment and you're watching an hour, 5 hours, 10 hours later, the portal moves fast. We are giving you the information that we have in real time with the understanding that, again, this stuff moves fast. So let's go ahead and get to what happened in the weekend. Let me start by saying this. I actually think that LSU with Lane Kiffin is actually the center of the college football portal world, and specifically at the quarterback position. Okay, by the way, great call by Matt. CFB Transfers on Twitter. That is our official page. We have our intern, Ben, helping me run that. CFB Transfers on Twitter. You're going to want to follow that for all the late-breaking portal news, okay? But let's go ahead and dive into the news. And like I said, I do think LSU, this is the spot that it all kind of centers around, specifically at the quarterback position. Lane Kiffin is there. He has money to burn. And so the big question becomes, which quarterback does he want? Now, I'll be totally transparent. I actually think the quarterback he wants is still playing for Ole Miss in Trinidad Chambliss, okay? Trinidad Chambliss, we're not going to spend too much time on him here because I don't know actually how realistic of an option he is. One, he's still got games to play. Ole Miss plays versus Miami on Thursday night. If they win, they're playing into late January at that point. But also, for people who don't follow this on a day-to-day basis, Trinidad Chambliss is technically out of eligibility. Now, he is appealing for a waiver for an extra year. I'll tell you, I've looked a little bit into the appeal. I don't actually think there's really a lot there, if I'm being perfectly honest. Basically, he's trying to argue that, when he was at Ferris State, he was the D2 quarterback. He took a red shirt in year one. Year two, he didn't play. And I think he's trying to argue that he should get a medical red shirt, and there wasn't really a medical issue. I looked into this a little bit. I think he had like mono, and he missed like 2 weeks of practice because of mono, but he didn't miss the season because of a medical red shirt. He just missed the season because he was a red shirt. He wasn't playing, whatever. I don't know that he's going to get cleared. And so as Trinidad Chambliss goes through this process, I think Lane Kiffin would love to have him, but I think Lane Kiffin has to go ahead and start looking at alternatives, and he really has. And of all the players that I'm going to talk about that I think could commit by the time you watch this, maybe it'll happen during this show, Brendan Sorsby, the quarterback from Cincinnati. Okay, so for people who don't know much about him, according to 24/7 Sports, he is the number 2 overall player in the transfer portal per 24/7 Sports. He played at Cincinnati, a dual threat guy. For people who maybe didn't watch a ton of Cincinnati football, 28 passing touchdowns this year. 28 passing touchdowns, 2,800 yards passing, another 600 yards on the ground with 9 rushing touchdowns. So a true dual threat, multi-year quarterback. I'll say this. I think there are some guys that are really testing the NFL draft process. Where do they stand? I think this kid is coming back to college football. And I think right now it really comes down to one of two schools. He visited Texas Tech, or actually before LSU. Then he got to LSU this week. And I'll tell you this, there are already crystal balls coming in for Brendan Sorsby to land at LSU. So we will see what happens. Nothing as we record is official, but Lane Kiffin is, listen, whatever we think about how Lane Kiffin left Ole Miss, and I've certainly made that rant time and time again, he is a quarterback whisperer. He is a quarterback guru. Look at what he did with Trinidad Chambliss. Look at what he did with Jackson Dart. And I can understand why every quarterback would want to play for him, especially, by the way, when they're probably going to make $3 to $4 million, which is the going rate for a quarterback in the portal. Now, Brendan Sorsby reportedly has a girlfriend at Texas Tech, so maybe Texas Tech is still in the mix, but it feels like the quarterback portal kind of cycle starts with Brendan Sorsby at LSU. We will see if he officially commits here in the next day or so. Really quickly, also at LSU, it is worth noting Sorsby was not the only visitor this weekend. Chaz Coleman is the number 1 rated defensive player in the transfer portal. He played at Penn State. He's kind of one of those guys, he was like a 5-star coming out of high school. He put up good stats this season, not like insane stats, but I bring it up because it is worth noting. If we have the picture, Matt, you can pop it up. He too was at LSU. He is posing with Lane Kiffin, the portal king. The Bentley came from Ole Miss to LSU. Chaz Coleman, the number 1 defensive player in the portal, was at LSU this weekend. Now, it is worth noting, Chaz Coleman is originally from the state of Ohio. Chaz Coleman is still projected by most to end up at Ohio State. But if Lane Kiffin gets you on campus, Lane Kiffin has a shot. We will see what happens there. So I mentioned LSU, Brendan Sorsby, kind of the epicenter of the college football world, the portal world, and specifically the quarterback world. The question then becomes, what happens with Brendan Sorsby, but also what does it mean for the rest of the QB dominoes? Well, let's get to a big name that certainly, at least on my social media feeds on Friday when the portal open, made headlines, and that is Sam Leavitt, the quarterback from Arizona State. Okay, so for people who don't remember, led Arizona State to a Big 12 title last year. Him and Cam Coleman were the stars of that team. They nearly upset Texas. He comes back to Arizona State this year. He's injured. It doesn't work out. There's kind of a weird falling out with Kenny Dillingham because I think Kenny Dillingham kind of knew he was entering the portal. There's a brother involved that's an agent. Anyway, I bring it up. Whatever we think of how it ended at ASU, we cannot deny this kid is a very talented quarterback, and I think there's a very good likelihood that he too could come off the board in the coming days. Now, what's interesting is this. Why I bring it up, we did our portal update on Friday. We talked a little bit about Kentucky. CJ Baxter from Texas was visiting. But I said, Austin Novostad was a backup at Oregon. Could he end up with Will Stein? Well, I bring it up because Will Stein, by the way, the new Kentucky head coach, was Oregon's offensive coordinator. Well, I bring it up because minutes after we got off air, it is reported that Sam Leavitt in Kentucky interest was picking up, and he was on campus over the weekend. So why I bring it up, Friday night, my social media timeline was buzzing. I had Kentucky fans in the DMs, Torres, are we getting Sam Leavitt? Or Torres, we are getting Sam Leavitt. Pop the champagne, pull up the Wedding Crashers gift because it's happening. It's official. What I said at the time to any Kentucky fan that would listen respectfully is that this stuff moves quick, but it also doesn't. And I wondered if Sam Leavitt, like I basically said, this is a guy you want him to commit on the spot this weekend while he is on campus, especially because, by the way, Will Stein is actually going back to Eugene to get ready for the college football semifinals where Oregon will face Indiana on Friday. And so I just bring it up because I said, you want to get this done. He's a really good player. Well, now he does not commit to Kentucky, at least not as we're recording this, always subject to change. And he will visit Texas Tech this week. Texas Tech, of course, we know the financial setup there. By the way, you can see our CFB transfers page getting you updated on Sam Leavitt, who will visit Texas Tech this week. All I'll say is this, is that a couple things. One, Sam Leavitt, what's interesting about him, it's kind of the weird portal chess that you're always playing in a situation like this, and I'll tell you why. It's because Sam Leavitt is the clear number one priority of the University of Kentucky, okay? And listen, I'll just be transparent. I was told he had a $4 million, I'm not making this up, $4 million offer on the table from Kentucky. And I said, this dude should take it right now and don't look back, go play for Will Stein. But at the same time, here's the thing. Other schools are not going to get their first choice. And what's interesting is Sam Leavitt is kind of in this in-between spot where I don't know that he's necessarily the first choice of Texas Tech, but if they don't get Brendan Sorsby, he does become the first choice of Texas Tech. Miami is going to need a quarterback. What is their situation if they don't get their guy? Or is Sam Leavitt, if Brendan Sorsby is off the board, their number one guy? LSU, if Brendan Sorsby falls through. So the point I'm trying to make is he's kind of in that interesting spot where he is the priority at some places, not the priority at others. We'll see if Kentucky can close the deal in coming days. We'll see if he leaves Texas Tech's campus as a Texas Tech Red Raider. This is one that will probably happen pretty soon. I do think the earliest we're probably looking at a commitment is probably Monday, though. And again, a day in the portal world is like 2 weeks in the rest of the world for everybody else. By the way, I'll say this for Will Stein. Outside of just Sam Leavitt, he had a monster recruiting weekend. We mentioned CJ Baxter early. By the way, Matt, cover your ears. Xavier Chaplin, the Auburn offensive tackle who, listen, was very good at Virginia Tech, was not as good at Auburn. I don't think producer Matt was sad to see him go, but he's a very talented player. Cover your ear, whatever. Matt gets the inside joke. But There was no pun intended, but he was at Kentucky. The other big name that caught everybody's attention, mainly because he looks so freaking good in Kentucky blue, DeAndre Moore, the wide receiver from Texas, okay? So this guy, really good, 38 catches, 5 touchdowns, number 3 player in the transfer portal, was on campus at Kentucky this weekend. And I don't know if we have the picture of him in the Kentucky threads. No one has ever looked better wearing Kentucky gear than DeAndre Moore. Okay, like I might just go buy the DeAndre Moore jersey if he commits to Kentucky. But we'll see what happens there. We know Will Stein, the offensive head coach that he is. Will Stein loves to say, feed the studs, get the studs the ball. DeAndre Moore would certainly fit that bill at Kentucky. But we'll see what happens, because while it sounds good on paper, it is worth noting that he is still going to visit Ohio State. He's still going to visit Louisville. Of course, we know Louisville's GM is former Kentucky assistant Vince Morrow, so there's ties there. And then I've also heard some buzz about Colorado and Deion Sanders for DeAndre Moore. So the visits are still coming for him. It does not look like a decision is necessarily imminent this second. Let's keep it going. Other news and notes from the weekend. I'll tell you this. You want to talk about a weird portal domino? DJ Lagway. So I'm a DJ Lagway truther, okay? Now, admittedly, I was a Jackson Arnold truther last offseason. It did not work out well. But DJ Lagway was very good as a freshman, hurt the entire offseason. And listen, we know he really struggled at Florida this year. We don't need to go through the stats. The team finished 4-8. He threw 1 million interceptions. It was a total disaster. But he is the former high school Gatorade Player of the Year, National Player of the Year. He showed flashes at Florida in year 1, and he is now in the portal. I'll tell you this, we got a surprise visit from DJ Lagway this weekend, because according to Pete Thamel, DJ Lagway is visiting Florida State. Okay, so Florida State, the rivals of the Gators. So obviously there's the scenario where DJ Lagway could be coming back to the Swamp in a Florida State uniform. I believe they play in Gainesville next year. Doesn't really matter. Why it's funny, why it's weird is pretty straightforward. It's because when Florida State was playing really well early and Florida was struggling, they lose to USF, Miami, and LSU all before the end of September. I saw a lot of Florida State fans having fun at DJ Lagway's expense. We'll see what happens. Listen, I feel bad for DJ Lagway. I hope he ends up in a better situation, because, listen, Gus Malzahn's a great offensive coach. Mike Norvell, whatever. It just feels like Florida State is a sinking ship. DJ Lagway, I still think he has potential, but he's got to end up in the right spot. Listen, if there's a Florida State fan watching and you want to get mad at me, that's fine. I'm kind of rooting against DJ Lagway ending up at Florida State. Like, I hope somehow he ends up in a better situation, maybe a Miami, depending on what they want to do. Maybe Brennan Sorsby falls through at LSU. I don't know. But DJ Lagway on campus at Florida State, the plot twist that at least I did not see coming. A couple other news and notes from inside the portal. You know, Curt Cignetti and Indiana are preparing for the college football playoff. Thought it was interesting, Cignetti actually acknowledging he kind of did a dual press conference with Dan Lanning, and they were both joking about, having to recruit the portal during the playoff. And Dan Lanning said, "Coach, you go focus on the portal. Don't even worry about Friday night." Well, Curt Cignetti and Indiana, they're moving fast, and they're another one that I think they're going to have some big-time commitments potentially by the time you see this video. 2 big names that I want to mention, one at the quarterback position. The first one, Josh Hoover, quarterback from TCU. Okay, so TCU, they had the incredible start to the season. Incredible start to the season, right? I don't know what else there really is to add there. They beat North Carolina. Hoover was incredible. Kind of goes under the radar the back half of the year. At a certain point, I think he was trending as like a late first, early second rounder. Doesn't really work out. But I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the portal. Well, he is in the portal, did not play in TCU's bowl win over USC. And I bring it up because all indications are that he is going to end up at Indiana. The crystal balls are starting to roll in for Josh Hoover to Indiana. Listen, you don't need me to tell you what Indiana can accomplish with a portal quarterback. You may have noticed last year with Curtis Rourke make the playoff. This year with Fernando Mendoza, he might be the number 1 overall pick. And clearly Mendoza will be out after this year. Josh Hoover appears to be favorite to land at Indiana. This is another one. I think this one actually could go quick. I think he's going to get to campus, get the offer he wants, have a chance to replace Mendoza. By the time you listen to this, it might happen. I'm not even hearing other schools that are really in the mix for him. I think this one could happen quick. You know what else I think could happen quick? His number one receiver could be off the board here soon to Indiana as well. So we talked about Parker Livingston the other day. Is that hold on one sec. His health. Okay. Producer Matt, producing the crap out of the show, says Hoover also has not missed a game in 2 years. So that's good news as well. Parker Livingston, really quick. So we talked about Parker Livingston on Friday's show because he felt like kind of the linchpin that sent let me backtrack. Cam Coleman's in the portal. Cam Coleman, as I'm recording, is on campus at Texas. But the linchpin that kind of sent Cam Coleman to Texas and maybe Texas maybe making him the favorite, Parker Livingston entering the portal. Third leading receiver this year, Arch Manning's roommate, Arch Manning's BFF. This one kind of raised eyebrows when he left. Now, there was a big back and forth on social media on Saturday. You know, he put out a statement where he said, I could never see the world where I was leaving Texas. And so all the bleeding heart reporters, you know, this is the problem with the portal. The guy wants to stay and Sark is forcing him out. Then it came out that he had an offer well into six figures to stay, but that, you know, listen, the priority is Cam Coleman. So I bring it up because Parker Livingston visited Indiana this weekend. Another one could come off the board quick. He's supposed to maybe visit Oklahoma as well, but Pete Nakos was the first to report that he was on campus this weekend. Again, as we record, it is now 12:28 or 11:28 Eastern time. No commitment is official. We mentioned Parker Livingston getting into the portal to make way potentially for Cam Coleman. We talked about Cam Coleman's on Friday's show. Let's go ahead and update Cam Coleman. I believe he's the number one player in the portal. 24/7 Sports says he's the number 4 prospect overall, number 1 wide receiver. We did a separate segment on him. People got mad by the way. How can you say he's this good? He had 56 catches. Blah, blah, blah. Dude, did you see the quarterback play at Auburn this year? Jackson Arnold, Ashton Daniels. Not Cam Coleman's fault that he didn't have a guy that could complete a simple pass to him, and the play calling was not good. Remember, this was a top 5 prospect coming out of high school, originally committed to A&M, ends up at Auburn. And you can't even say it didn't go well for him personally, but he showed why he is the priority that he is in the transfer portal. And so I bring it up to very simply say that, as I mentioned, Texas was the perceived favorite going into the weekend. He ends up visiting Texas. As we're recording right now, he's at Texas. Now, what became interesting was a couple things. I saw Texas fans, we can't let him leave campus without a commitment, blah, 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 this and that. Listen, welcome to the world of high-stakes portal recruiting, okay? And why I bring it up is pretty straightforward. So I'm going to give you a little inside baseball here. Cam Coleman has the same agent as Micah Parsons. Okay, remember Micah Parsons? Every day there was a new story. What's true? What's not true? The negotiations. Blame Jerry. Don't blame Jerry. Whatever. I think his name's David Mugeta, I want to say is how you pronounce his last name. Well, I bring it up because as soon as I saw that was his agent, I was like, yeah, he ain't always subject to change. I said, I don't think he's committing anywhere right away because Cam Coleman is one of the rare players who has all of the leverage. Most of these guys, if they don't commit, boom, we're moving on to the next guy. Sorry, peace, deuces, you're out. Cam Coleman is not that guy. People will wait for Cam Coleman, and that appears to be what is happening as Cam Coleman, after his Texas visit, is expected to visit Texas A&M, Texas Tech, and USC. Now, I will be honest, the Texas Tech thing to me feels like a little bit of a leverage play. I don't think he's going to Texas Tech, but we see it in basketball all the time. People will throw a couple schools in the mix to try to boost the offer because we know Texas Tech is going to come in hot and offer whatever he wants. So if Texas Tech offers, say, 2.5, they can go to Texas and say, listen, Texas Tech just offered 2.5. Can you give us 3? If not, he'll go to Texas Tech. I would assume that he will still end up either at Texas or Texas A&M. We talked about how during his recruitment was very close with a guy by the name of Holloman Wiggins, was at the time, was at Alabama. He's now at A&M. Also, he is visiting USC. Listen, USC feels like this weird tipping point situation where it could go either way next year with Jaden Mayava, with Lincoln Riley. I would find it pretty hard to believe a situation where he ends up at USC. I think it's down to Texas and Texas A&M. Always subject to change, but if I had to guess right now, I would pick Texas as of 11:31 Eastern time on Saturday. Really quickly, let's switch gears. And, we're going to sort of switch gears. We're going to stay in the portal. As mentioned, CFB Transfers on Twitter. You're going to want to follow that page, CFB Transfers on Twitter. And so let's go ahead and talk about another name that is like, all right, let me even backtrack. We're talking portal, but I want to talk about a name that is very interesting when it comes to the portal. Maybe surprising to many of you. I want to talk Ty Simpson, the Alabama quarterback. Okay, so Ty Simpson, one of the most interesting in-season arcs that I can ever, like, I'm not kidding, that I can ever remember. Starts out the year, gets beat up at Florida State. Is he really the answer? Comes back, picks up a bunch of nice wins in a row, beats Tennessee, beats Missouri, beats Vandy, wins at Georgia. And at one point, I think the stats were 20 touchdowns, 1 interception, I believe was the stat. Heisman favorite, talking about him as the potential number 1 overall pick. Well, I bring it up because as the season went on, I don't totally blame Ty Simpson for this. Production went down because Alabama could not run the football. And so Alabama couldn't run the football. Listen, I'm not enough of a scheme expert to explain exactly what defenses were doing, but it was clear that they could load the box, that they didn't have to load the box is really the right way to put it, and that basically the run was no threat and they could really go after Ty Simpson. So the stats dropped, and as the stats dropped, obviously, you could kind of see the warts, if you will, with the NFL draft situation. A little bit small, not super athletic. And so I bring it up because right before the season ended, I checked in with somebody that I trust around Alabama. I said, is there any possibility that he could enter the portal? And so I bring it up because I want to get to what that person told me in a minute. But apparently I was barking up the right tree because on Saturday, I start seeing all this stuff about, is Ty Simpson going to enter the portal? Where could he end up? And I was trying to figure out where it came from. Well, let's give credit to Tom Loy, a 24/7 recruiting expert, who was the first one to insinuate this, and it took off on social media on Saturday into Sunday. This via the TriStar Network, but they gave credit to Tom Loy that if Ty Simpson gets a first-round grade, he'll go pro. But if he doesn't, he could come back to college, enter the transfer portal, and Tennessee and Oregon, specifically Tennessee. Talk about an interesting third Saturday in October next year. Tennessee and Oregon could land him as a potential quarterback. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into this. And as I said, this was something, listen, I'm not perfect. I try to stay on top of stuff as best I can. There's only so much that I can monitor at any given time, okay? But at the same time, I saw this and I said to myself, this is really interesting. And as the season wore on, and as I'm just monitoring NFL draft stuff, I'm not an NFL draft expert, but as I'm monitoring it, I said, Ty Simpson's kind of struggling. He's falling down draft boards. So like I said, I checked in with my Bama guy. I said, is there any chance that he could potentially leave after this season and enter the transfer portal? And by the way, for people who don't know the Alabama depth chart, the thought process is simple. One, Ty Simpson got knocked out of the Rose Bowl, and Austin Mack, his backup, actually looked better than him. But then two, Keelan Russell was the number 1 quarterback in last year's high school class, the class of 2025. He took a red shirt this year, and we know how it works in this world that we live in. Guys don't want to sit on the bench for 2, 3, 4 years without playing. And so the thought process is you can't risk losing Keelan Russell to the transfer portal if you do not start him next year. Is it fair? Is it unfair? I don't know. It's just the world that we live in, and especially in a world that Ty Simpson maybe is a little bit limited, okay? So I bring it up because I touched base with my Bama guy right before the Oklahoma game, and he sent me a very interesting text. I can't read it verbatim, but essentially what he told me is this. He said the goal is that Ty leads us to a win at Oklahoma, and we'll see what happens in the Rose Bowl. and we wish him luck in the NFL. And if it doesn't work out, we probably have to turn the keys over to Keelan. And so the insinuation was basically like, this was the insinuation. Do enough to beat Oklahoma, which Ty Simpson did, but do enough to prove that you're a first-round pick. And essentially, the vibe that I got was this, that Ty Simpson will not be back at Alabama next year. And then just the question becomes, Alabama doesn't want him to transfer, but they have to turn it over to the bigger name quarterback, the more dynamic quarterback. They don't want him to transfer, and he doesn't want to transfer. He wants to be a Bama legend. You know, legend's a strong word, but you get the point. He wants to start and end his career at Alabama. He doesn't want to play at multiple schools. We know the value of being an Alabama quarterback and what it can do for your life after football. But at the same time, if you're not going to be a first-round pick, you have to at least consider coming back, and it sounds like he's considering coming back with two very interesting schools in the mix. Let's start with Oregon. And for people just joining us, the report that we're hearing is that Ty Simpson, if he does not get a first-round grade, could pursue the transfer portal, and Tennessee and Oregon would be deemed favorites. So Oregon has maybe the most interesting quarterback situation of anybody in college football. Dante Moore is awesome. Dante Moore, I don't think it would happen, but in theory could be the number one pick in the draft. At the same time, he also is a little bit raw, doesn't have a ton of starts under his belt, and there is a very definitive possibility that he decides to return to college football. And I think what's even more interesting than the possibility of him returning to college football, there's the possibility that no one, even Dante Moore, knows exactly what he's going to do, right? Because let's say he plays Indiana on Friday night, and let's say he balls out and throws for 300 yards against the best defense that he'll face all year, and he outplays Fernando Mendoza. Now we're talking about him as the potential number one pick in the draft. You outplayed Mendoza. You probably have to go. But let's say he goes 13 of 28 or 17 of 28, whatever. 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Mendoza's clearly the better guy, and he clearly needs work. Well, now, as I said, we know that the good quarterbacks in college football are getting upwards of $4 million in the portal. That's the asking price of the Brendan Sorsbys, of the Sam Levitts. And so I just bring it up because if you can get $4 million to come back to Oregon, develop for another year, that's probably something Dante Moore has to think about, and Dante Moore may not go pro. And so Oregon, it's a good situation to have, but you're in this weird holding pattern that I think we're going to find out one way or another after this Indiana game. But if he plays well enough where he has to leave, well, then he's got to leave, and then you need a quarterback. And so Ty Simpson would make sense there. I will say early on there was some Dylan Raiola rumblings that seemed to kind of be whatever. But at the same time, let me also say this. I don't know where it's going to land with our friends in the Vol Army, okay? But I think Ty Simpson in Tennessee actually makes a ton of sense. And I actually think Tennessee fans are coming around to the idea that Ty Simpson at Tennessee makes a ton of sense. First of all, with Tennessee, it's almost the situation that Alabama is in right now. You have the number one quarterback in high school for 2026 committed, Faison Brandon. And you really, if you don't have to, you don't want to throw him into the fire in the SEC next year. This is Faison Brandon, the Tennessee quarterback. And so you kind of want a bridge quarterback. And let me go ahead and give you a bold take. I actually think Ty Simpson would be very good in Josh Heupel's offense. First of all, it's worth noting there are ties to the school. Ty Simpson basically committed to Alabama over Tennessee. It's interesting. He was actually mostly recruited by the Jeremy Pruitt staff. I saw a funny tweet from one of the Tennessee burner accounts that basically said, you know how much Ty loves Tennessee? He was willing to come play for Jeremy Pruitt. This guy deserves a shot. But at the same time, you look at who Ty Simpson is, you look at his skill set, you look at his limitations, and it actually, to me, makes a ton of sense. Ty Simpson isn't crazy athletic. He's not going to make a ton of plays with his legs. But that's not what Tennessee wants its quarterback to do. Tennessee wants its quarterback to get the ball, get it out, make plays quick. It's tempo, it's speed, it's whatever. And oh, by the way, whatever we think of Josh Heupel, I like Josh Heupel, but I know Tennessee fans are a little bit frustrated with him. I only bring it up because Josh Heupel, historically, his teams have always been able to run the ball. I believe the stat was up until this year, they finished in the top 4 in the SEC in rushing every single year that Josh Heupel had been at Tennessee, including year one when they went 8-5 overall. So you have a team that has never had trouble running the ball. You have a team whose entire offense is based on getting the ball out quickly and making smart decisions. You have a quarterback who is really smart but is a little bit limited athletically. This makes a ton of sense to me. And so we'll see what happens. By the way, maybe Ty Simpson gets a first-round grade. You look at this NFL draft, once you get past Dante Moore and Fernando Mendoza, and Dante Moore might not even be in this draft, the quarterback talent falls off a cliff very quickly. And so to me, maybe he gets that first-round grade. Maybe he doesn't have to transfer. Maybe he's totally happy just going down as the dude who was the bridge quarterback from the Nick Saban era to the Kalen DeBoer era, never gave up on the program, didn't transfer, didn't whatever. That remains to be seen. But to me, if I'm Ty Simpson, I actually think the Tennessee thing makes a ton of sense. Oregon, by the way, you could find a lot worse of a landing spot than Oregon, but we'll see what happens. Alabama has clearly been eliminated from the postseason. And if Ty Simpson is going to go in the portal, I would assume it's going to happen here, in the somewhat near future. Fascinating story, though. Ty Simpson. Imagine Alabama running out of the tunnel at Neyland Stadium next year, and they're facing off with Ty Simpson. Welcome to the new world of college football. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get to, by the way, a ton of your questions. We have a great live audience. We appreciate everybody listening, but we got to get to some college hoops. Busy weekend as we get deeper away from, as the portal starts to wind down, we'll get more college football heavy. Arkansas, speaking of Tennessee, smacks Tennessee at Bud Walton Arena. Speaking again, smacked. Mark Pope smacked as well. We'll talk those games. BYU wins, St. John's loses, a lot of college hoops. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Cauley Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan. And one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Cauley Puffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Cauley Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to CauleyPuffs.com. That's CauleyPuffs.com, CauleyPuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase. One bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. CauleyPuffs.com gets you 15% off. Cauley Puffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but CauleyPuffs.com, CauleyPuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Cauley Puffs. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Matt, before we get to the hoops of the day, is there anything football related that we need to touch on? No. Chat's humming. Kevin says, if Ty Simpson transfers, I'm hoping he goes to Oregon. He'd do well. Everyone does well at Oregon. Bo Nix did well at Oregon. Dylan Gabriel got drafted at Oregon. Dante Moore might be the number one overall pick. I kind of hope he goes to Tennessee because I just think it'd be fascinating from the Alabama-Tennessee perspective. Really quickly, what else we got, Matt? Exciting times to be a Cat fan. Stein has brought life back. Listen, I didn't mention this off the top. Let me say this very quickly. I was thinking about this as Will Stein had this monster portal group on campus. Now, we don't know who he's going to land, who he's not going to land, but everybody who was in this, like, we'll never do better than Stoops, we can't get rid of him. Like, this just proves you could do better than Stoops and you needed to get rid of him. Because if Stoops had still been the head coach, virtually none of the players that were on campus, you're not getting the quality of player to even visit that Will Stein got this weekend because of who Will Stein is, the relationships he has recruiting all these guys at Oregon, and then, oh, by the way, the offense that he can provide. I was thinking about that this weekend, just the funny stuff about thinking about the number of times on this show that I had Kentucky fans saying we're not going to be able to get out of the buyout. We're stuck with Stoops until the end of time. It's funny how quickly things changed. Really quickly, Matt, before we get to other questions, this cracked me up. Somebody said Torres filibusters too much. Yeah, I mean, what do you want from me? We're talking ball here. No apologies. I think it was Eddie who tweeted that or sent that in. Eddie, you comment on everything. You love the show. Torres is going to keep talking the way that he talks. Matt, really quickly, any other ones before we get to some college hoops? Okay. Titan Pig, this is a good transition. Ready to see what my pigs will do in the portal. The DB they just got is a good get, around 650 snaps, only one TD given up. Ryan Silverfield, another one. And by the way, listen, I know Sam Pittman left Hunter Yurachek no choice, but it is so obvious that they needed new blood in that program with that football team. And again, we'll see what Silverfield does. But remember, what did he flip? 3 of the top 4 high school players in Arkansas the day after he got the job. I just think we're moving towards this world. You got to get the old guys out. The old guys that want to complain about NIL, that want to complain about raising money, that want to complain about their best players, potentially seeking free agency. It's the new world. Hopefully you're not going to have to turn over your roster year over year, but it is the reality. You know what else is reality? You're going to want to get to some games. And when you get to games, you know what you got to do? You got to download America's #1 ticketing app, SeatGeek. Okay, so SeatGeek is the official ticketing partner of the Aaron Torres pod. Over 28 million downloads. And what I love about SeatGeek is this. 1, they let you know how good the ticket is right in that app. Okay, so all you got to do, if you go to SeatGeek.com, every ticket rated 1 through 10 with a green dot or a red dot. Green dot means go ahead and purchase. Red dot means stay away. The ticket kind of stinks, okay? But what I really love about SeatGeek, and I want to thank the hundreds of you that have taken advantage of this opportunity, is that they are friends of the Aaron Torres pod, and they take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. And so if you go to SeatGeek.com, and if you use promo code Torres, that's promo code TORRES, you get $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek.com applies, by the way, not just games, but shows, concerts, whatever. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. Let's go ahead and switch gears. Let's talk basketball. Weird weekend in basketball. Obviously, basketball is going to ramp up exponentially over the next couple weeks. Okay, we're going to be covering way more basketball than we have as we're now done with out-of-conference play and we're into conference play. Weirdly, though, first weekend of conference play, there were actually only 2 ranked matchups all weekend. Michigan went BTA on USC on Friday. Actually, there were 3. It was Nebraska-Michigan State. Yes, that was a top 25 matchup on Friday night. It was USC and Michigan on Friday night. Michigan, we're going to talk about at some point before the end of the show. They're unbelievable. But they took care of former Arkansas coach Eric Musselman. Well, I bring it up because Muss's former team, the Arkansas Razorbacks, they were at home to open SEC play on Saturday afternoon against the Tennessee Vols. Arkansas takes care of business against Tennessee. What was the final score? I believe it was 83-73. Is that correct, Matt? 86-75. I don't know where I got 83-73, but Arkansas with the season opening SEC win. And it's a little early, but is it really too early to ask one question? Can anything stop the Big Pig Invasion? Can anything stop the Big Pig Invasion? Yeah, you can get your tea, AaronTorresOnline.com/shop. By the way, we have some back orders on Big Pig Invasion, BPIs as I call them, teas. I got a new shipment coming in this week. We're going to get them out if you have ordered. AaronTorresOnline-shop. All right, let's go ahead and get into Arkansas. And listen, I could go through a million different things. By the way, I was thinking about this. Remember last year? Arkansas struggles out of the gates in SEC play. It started with a loss at Tennessee, and now you come full circle and you see where this program is. It's unbelievable. But what I was going to say, I'm not going to filibuster, as Eddie said a minute ago in the chat. Let's get right down to it. Arkansas won because of 2 very simple words, and 2 words that we are going to be saying a lot over the course of the next few months. It's really simple. Arkansas has Darius Acuff, and everybody else doesn't. Okay, so listen, I don't even know what to say about Darius Acuff at this point, okay? But keep in mind, listen, Tennessee, we're going to talk about them a little bit. They're good, but not great. But at the end of the day, what does Tennessee do? They're tough, they're physical, they defend, they make you uncomfortable. Well, they make everybody uncomfortable except for Darius Acuff, okay? And that is because Darius Acuff, as a true freshman in his first SEC game, finishes with 29 points in the victory. And oh, by the way, he also finishes not just with 29 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. And listen, like I said, I don't even know what to say about Darius Acuff at this point, okay? Like I said, 29 points, 4 assists, 3 rebounds. But what keeps standing out to me every time that I watch him, he is so efficient in what he does. Like, guys, a lot of guys can get 29 points at any level of basketball. What makes Darius Acuff different, and what I think makes Darius Acuff even different from the first few weeks of the season, is that he's doing it in much more of an efficient manner. I think the first week or so, he was trying to do too much. I don't want to say the speed of the game was too much for him, because it wasn't. But at the same time, he's playing within the game. He's not forcing it. And here's the crazy part. 9 of 16 shooting, well over 50% from the field for a 6'2 point guard, 6'3, whatever he is. 3 of 7 from 3. So he's super efficient. He was in complete control. He was by far the best player on the court. By the way, it's kind of worth noting he left for a minute with cramps. And so I bring it up because, could he have gone for 35 in this game if he had been fully healthy? I don't know. But he was unbelievable, and it is leading to just an incredible season where I think he's going to end up winning SEC Player of the Year, okay? Look at his stats in games against power conference competition, because it's one thing to put up bad stats against bad competition. Ask Nate Oates. He had a lot to say about that with Kentucky. Darius Acuff is playing his best games against the best competition. Matt, did you get that Jeff Borzello tweet I sent you? If you did, I would love to have it up. If not, I can read off the screen here. Great stuff from Jeff Borzello from ESPN. Darius Acuff has faced 6th ranked opponents so far. 29 points, 4 assists against Tennessee, 27.7 assists against Houston, 20-8 against Texas Tech, 17-10 against Louisville, 21-5 against Duke, 16-6 against Michigan State. A point guard is good when his worst game was 16 points, 6 rebounds on the road against a top 10 Michigan State team, by the way, playing a veteran point guard in Jeremy Fears. But he has been unbelievable. He has been the best player in the biggest games. He is a star. He is, in my opinion, the SEC Player of the Year right now. And I'll say this. I think because he started slow, people are kind of slow to this. I think he's going to end up as a first-team All-American. He is playing as good as any guard in the country right now. Again, didn't start off as well as I can't say he didn't start off great, because 16-6 against Michigan State, on and on. I just bring it up because he's getting better as the season goes on and getting more comfortable at this level in college basketball. And honestly, he's not going to face many better defensive teams than Tennessee like he did on Saturday. And so he's having an incredible year, and it backs up the fact that John Calipari very much believes in this player and this team. As a matter of fact, Matt, why don't you go ahead and play the sound of Cal after the game? My buddy John Neighbor shared this from Inside Arkansas, so let's give them credit for pulling this from John Calipari's press conference. But here he is on not only Darius Acuff, but his freshman guard, Malik Thomas, as well.
He's, anybody that watches, it's killing people that he's this good. He and Malik Thomas, we got 2 of the best freshmen in the country. People aren't happy about it, and I'm hoping we're signing another group that's going to be similar to these guys. I'm doing this with freshmen. That's what I'm doing. They may be able to tell me you'll never do it. You'll never get to a Final Four. We started 5 freshmen. I know that game is different and people are older with beards and children and stuff. I know that. But the freshmen, Darius Acuff is a beast. You can say he's a good player. He is a beast. That's who, when you look at his body, you're like, holy cow, this kid's a beast. So he can score all kind of different ways. He's good. I mean, don't tell me there are 15 freshmen better than he and Malik. You can say it and then be mad about it, and that's what I believe. No, it's not your opinion. It's your hope. But it's not your opinion. It's your hope. But those two are good.
By the way, at the end there, I think the insinuation is Cal, one of the recruiting services, I'm not here to criticize, I think it was On3, dropped him in the rankings as the season went on last year. But you could tell, and we've said this since the summer, one thing about Cal, he wears his emotions on his sleeve. You could tell he liked his team with the way that he's scheduled in the summer for this season. And you could tell he likes this team. And the thing that stands out to me, listen, I know things didn't go great against Houston before the winter break. This is a very good team. And I'll be blunt. Listen, the sport right now is going to go through Michigan, going to go through Arizona, going to go through whoever. But when you have a player like Darius Acuff that can single-handedly take over games, there is no ceiling to what you can do. And I think the other thing is this. The guys that you need to be great are starting to play great going forward. Malik Thomas struggled, some of December was not great. Well, he was awesome in this game. Finishes with 18 points off the bench, 6 of 13 from the field, 3 of 4 from 3. The guy that stands out to me of late, I think Carter Knox is slowly starting to figure out how to play with these other really good guards in this system. Averaging double figures over the last 5 games, and we know who they've played in the last 5 games: Texas Tech, Houston, Tennessee, etc. Billy Richmond barely even played on Saturday. He's awesome. Let's give credit to DJ Wagner. I was going to say DJ Lagway. Got a lot on my brain right now. Let's give credit to DJ Wagner because he is a guy that he's had certainly some peaks and valleys over the course of his career, but he seems to be fully embracing being the older player, being the veteran player, being the guy that guys look up to, willing to take a back seat. When Darius Acuff went out with the cramps on Saturday afternoon, he stepped into the point guard role. Just seems like the ultimate team guy. Crazy part is for Arkansas, Trevin Brazile played good but not great on Saturday, but you're starting to get more production consistently from Malik Thomas. Nick Pringle, they talked about the fact that they were showing his highlights against Tennessee last year. I really like this team, and I really believe they are the best team in the SEC. I've been saying it for 3 weeks. I like Alabama. We'll get to them in a second, but I think the counter to that is that Alabama's a little small in the front court, and so I just bring it up. Arkansas, to me, is the SEC favorite. Darius Acuff, I believe, is going to end up winning SEC Player of the Year, barring something shocking. And you have a dude like that on the court for you. No real ceiling to what you can do on the season. Very quickly, from the Tennessee side of things, I saw the full gauntlet of emotions from Tennessee on Saturday in this game. It's hard for me to get too fired up about Tennessee. They did beat Houston in a neutral. They did beat Louisville earlier this month or late last month. They're a good team. They're going to be fine. I think what is abundantly clear with Tennessee is 2 things. One, it's really hard to replace really good veterans. Jemai Mashack, Zakai Ziegler, most of the roster last year had been there for 2, 3, 4 years at a certain point. The other thing is, I'm not here to criticize, but Nate Amen has not been, frankly, if we're being honest, what you paid him to be. You paid him to be the go-to guy, to be that Chaz Lanier, the Dalton Connect, what the offense runs through. He's been fine. He's not great. 13 points on Saturday, 4 of 9 from the field. He's there. He's putting up stats. I don't know that he's really impacting too much offensively or winning games. You need him to be better. And maybe he will be, by the way, because it's easy to forget this now. Chaz Lanier really struggled to open SEC play last year. Now, Chaz Lanier was a 4th-year college guy, not a true freshman, but he hasn't been what I think a lot of people thought he would be. Amari Evans has actually been the better freshman in some ways, especially over the last couple games. I think Tennessee is fine. I think that Final Four window was probably the last 2 years. I don't think they're that kind of team, but I saw some Tennessee. We're not even making the tournament. You're going to make the tournament. You beat Houston and Louisville in the out-of-conference. Those games are going to withstand the test of time. I just worry bigger picture about how far you can go once you get there. Let's switch gears to the other big game in the SEC. This was the one. They scheduled it before the NFL. They were hoping for a top 25 matchup. It was certainly a game that I thought would be a top 25 matchup going into the season. It certainly was not once we got there. Alabama hosting the Kentucky Wildcats. I hate to say it, but it went very much like a lot of big Kentucky games have this season. Kentucky falls down by a lot. They rally in the second half. It ultimately does not matter. Final score, Alabama 89, Kentucky 74. Listen, we always say it. More interesting stories often in the losing locker room. Alabama's really good. You know, what's crazy about Alabama in this game, Aiden Sherrill, their best big man, was basically out for virtually the entire game. It did not matter. They dominated Kentucky. They shot the crap out of the three ball. They really just start to finish. It was never really in doubt. Where the issue comes in is Kentucky. And so let's talk about them. Let's do the big picture, the small picture stuff. And listen, let's do the full gauntlet of it, right? Is that they did come into this game on a 4-game winning streak. I don't think any of us thought St. John's was great or Indiana was great, but you got those 2 wins and you had a little bit of momentum coming into 2026, and that momentum, poof, just disappeared. I think what's frustrating about the Kentucky thing is transparently, this is the exact same game that we have seen against Michigan State, against Louisville, against Gonzaga. Of your 5 losses, 4 of them look exactly the same. You fall down early. You rally late. The score in some ways isn't reflective of as bad as it was because you lose by 15. You were down by 21 in the first half. But it's the same routine, and it's the same problems, and it falls on one man, and it's Mark Pope. And I'm not here to crush Mark Pope. And I don't think he's getting fired after this year. But it's like, I think Kentucky fans have a reason to be frustrated, especially given what we know about this roster and what people are being paid. But to me, it's not even about the $22 million thing. I don't even care about that. If you have the right guys, it does not matter. The issue is you have the wrong guys in the wrong spots, playing the wrong minutes at the wrong times. You know what was the most frustrating part, and I know Kentucky fans were frustrated about this, is that, first of all, Mark Pope doesn't even play his best players to start the game. Jalen Lowe is the dude that you paid a lot of money to be your point guard. I know you have to be careful with his minutes because of his shoulder, but at a certain point, it's almost like a pitcher in the Major League Baseball playoffs, right? It's like you can't save your best starter for game 4 or you can't save your starter for game 2 if he can pitch in game 1. You know, if you could bring him out of the bullpen in game 7, the season is on the line, you do it. And it's the same with Jalen Lowe here. I understand you don't want to lose him for the year, but if you're getting blown out, what does it matter? And the same exact thing happened that has happened all year with Kentucky. They fell down like 19-6 or something. It was something like 19-6, 19-8, something like that. And you're behind the 8 ball and you can never catch up. So you're not playing your best players. You're not playing them together. We'll get to that in a minute. And the other thing that stands out is this offense that we were all sold on. Like, where is it? Because to me, like, this is the crazy part, right? As somebody who covers all this stuff and has been doing it for a long time, what stands out to me is go back to when Mark Pope was hired. The John Calipari stagnant offense. Nobody wanted it. What was the word? It wasn't modern. It wasn't modern. That was all I heard from everybody. And by the way, maybe it wasn't. But at the same time, Pope was supposed to have this revolutionary offense. It kind of was last year. This year, they're stuck in the mud. It's the same thing that people complained about with Calipari for years. I noticed it dating all the way back to the Michigan State game at the Champions Classic in November. I was like, they don't run an offense. It's high ball screen, and your guards aren't good enough to get to the rim. And when they are, they don't finish. And when they don't make the right decision out of the ball screen. And so the offense is stagnant. I'll be honest, I didn't even notice that the big guys don't really pass the ball once it goes inside. As a matter of fact, you want to know how bad it is? Let's talk about Nate Oates, because Nate Oates, like, I love Coach Oates, okay? Sometimes he says stuff, and I don't think he realizes what he says in real time, and sometimes he does. But remember, like 4 or 5 years ago during COVID, Coach K was trying to get the season canceled, and Nate Oates was like, Well, if Coach K had a good team, he wouldn't be trying to cancel the season. And it became like a national story. Sometimes Nate Oates just says stuff. I don't know if this was intentional or not, but Nate Oates was kind of asked about defending this Kentucky team after the game. He gave a great answer that made a lot of headlines. Here is Nate Oates on scouting Kentucky coming into this game.
Yeah, I mean, so we looked at a few different stats coming in this game. I had our guys pull every assist they've had, because when I watched them play, I didn't feel like they moved the ball great. And then you look, and their assist rate's actually pretty high. Well, do a little deeper dive, 27 assists, 27 assists, 27 assists against by games that played a lot of zone. When they played high major teams that were really good, their assist rate's very low. They throw it into the bigs, they're not really passing. They had 7 assists out of the post in 13 games coming in. Moreno had 4 of them. I think somebody else had 3. I can't remember who it was, and then nobody else had an assist in 13 games out of the post. So our thing was they throw it in. Like, these guys they're not trying to pass. They're trying to score the ball, especially, outside of Moreno, who's really talented and will pass the ball a little bit. But, I think you saw a few times I was a little disappointed. We needed to go dig it out even better, but we made plays on the post, told our guards, go get it. Like, they're not passing. Go get the ball. They're trying to score when they throw it in there. So our bigs, like, fight to catch, force it out. Our guards, when they get it, go get it, because they're not passing the ball.
Did Nate Oates just put Mark Pope in a body bag? Because I kind of think Nate Oates just put Mark Pope in a body bag. Goodness gracious. I'll be honest. Listening to that the second time, I think it's very clear. I think Nate Oates did it on purpose to be like, yeah, I don't even know what the insinuation is. I don't know if it's for recruiting down the road when he gets into the portal and he says they're big. I don't know what it is. That felt very intentional out of Nate Oates. Okay. But at the same time, it speaks to whatever offense we were sold is not happening. And then here's the other thing. Pope isn't even, and I'm not trying to criticize the guy. I don't care. But it is, at some point, my job is you got to be transparent, and it's just been a total dud in every perspective, roster construction, evaluation, whatever. But it's also been a disaster when the games get played. And what's interesting to me, Pope was always sold as this guy that played a lot of different players, and that works if you have the right guys playing the right minutes with the right combinations. But this stat blew me away. Dylan Ballard, who covers Kentucky for a Sea of Blue, put out this tweet, and it made a lot of headlines. Go ahead, Matt, if we have the tweet. So, against St. John's, which is still the biggest win of Kentucky's season, Jalen Lowe, Otega Owe, which was spelled wrong, but I think you probably autocorrect, Cam Williams, Mo Diabate, Jaden Quayens. They played most of the second half against St. John's together, including a 10-0 run, and led Kentucky to a win and a comeback. Against Alabama, that same lineup, Lowe, Owe, Cam Williams, Diabate, Quayens, played 1 minute together. By the way, Cam Williams, the game before Christmas, had 8 3-pointers made. What was it? 24 points, 27 points, something like that on 8 3-pointers made. Played like 16 minutes, took 4 shots. And so, listen, nobody's perfect. Nobody is flawless on game day. But Mark Pope was sold as this guy that believed in the analytics and understood stuff on a. So where are the analytics? To Dylan Ballard's point, you got a lineup that blew St. John's out of the water, and you played them 1 minute together. Cam Williams, who was finally starting to hit his stride, all of a sudden plays 16 minutes with 5 points. And so I could go on, but this is the most disappointing team in college basketball. And I think the especially frustrating thing is this. We've heard, you can't judge, and I said it too, can't judge them until everybody comes back. Can't judge them until everybody comes back. Well, now everybody's back. Jalen Lowe didn't start and played 27 minutes on Saturday, second most minutes behind only Otega Owe. And so why is he's playing? The roster is healthy. They're all on the court. And you get the same result. Alabama wins. And it is worth noting, by the way, not only does Alabama win, Nate Oates now is 4-0 against Mark Pope, 2 wins last year in the regular season, SEC tournament. Alabama with the victory. They're a really good team. I think it's Arkansas and Alabama are the clear two best teams in the SEC. Auburn has talent, but who knows what's going on with them. Kentucky's kind of a mess. By the way, I still think Kentucky's a tournament team. There's so much dead weight at the bottom of the SEC this year. I just think Mark Pope has to make sure this team doesn't quit on them. But goodness gracious, this team is disappointing. One more big picture thought from Saturday, and it comes from a game that I don't think a lot of people were necessarily paying attention to, but it was BYU Kansas State. It does get the national TV spotlight against, on Saturday. And I thought what was interesting was that it was a game that BYU, you could see the scenario where maybe they wouldn't play great. It was their first true road game of the year, Big 12 opener, and it was Kansas State's first sellout against anybody other than Kansas in like 4 or 5 years. So tough environment, on the road, first true road environment. And guess what? It was never really that close from start to finish. Final score, this was the 83-73 score that I was talking about a minute ago. They get the 83-73 win. BYU opens Big 12 play with a win and is now 13-1. Why I want to talk about this game is a couple things. One, it shows how good BYU is. Two, it shows how much better they can get. As far as the game is concerned, what stood out to me watching it, and because the Kentucky Alabama game was so bad, I had plenty of time to start flipping channels. What stood out about this game is that there were certainly some highs. AJ DeBonsa was awesome. Again, 24 points, 8 of 15 from the field, 8 rebounds. Richie Saunders, Rob Wright in double figures. But what was crazy to me about this game for BYU, I don't even think they played anything close to their best game. They win by 10, but they had overall, DeBansa had 7 turnovers, but as a team on the road, they had 19 total turnovers, and they missed 9 foul shots. So you start talking about a 10-point win on the road with 19 turnovers, and you missed 9 fouls. This could have been a 20-point game very easily. And by the way, Richie Saunders, who's been awesome the last couple weeks quietly, a little bit of a quiet night for him, 4 of 15 from the field, 3 of 11 from 3. So Richie Saunders doesn't play great. Bunch of turnovers from this team. Oh, by the way, on top of it, you miss 9 free throws and you still win by 10. They probably played a C-plus game, B- game, and they win by 10. And so the only reason I want to talk about this game is because of this. We live in this world where everything in college basketball right now at the top of the sport really is about 3 or 4 teams. It's about Michigan, who's unbelievable. We're not going to take any credit away from them. It's about Arizona, which is the number 1 team in the country. Not going to take anything away from them. It's about UConn. It's about Houston. It's about a lot of different teams. BYU, in my opinion, is quietly the best team in college basketball that nobody is talking about. Okay, now I know what everyone's going to say. Oh, what do you mean nobody's talking about him? AJ DeBonsa might be the number 1 pick in the draft. People were talking about AJ DeBonsa, but even AJ DeBonsa, I don't think he had a 30-point triple-double the other day. This is DeBonsa. He's averaging 28, 8, and 8 over something crazy. I don't know what it is, but over his last 7-8 games. I think people are talking about DeBonsa. I don't think people are talking about BYU, though. Now, it's not, I understand why, right? They're 13-1. They don't have incredible wins. They beat Clemson. They beat Miami. They beat Wisconsin. Nobody that's an amazing win. But they are also 13-1 for the first time since 2010, 2011. That was the Jimmer Fredette year. Their only loss is to UConn in Boston in a game they easily could have won. And I just feel like of all the teams that are legitimately awesome, I don't think people are talking about them. 13-1, 10-point win on the road to open conference play in a game that wasn't even competitive. And I think there's another ceiling to get to because they didn't play that well. They're going to keep getting better. Saunders has been unbelievable. DeBonsa is who he is at this point. He's just a star. He's just a first-team All-American, period. By the way, I think we could be trending to 3 first-team All-American, 3 freshman first-team All-American, DeBonsa, Acuff, and Boozer. Another conversation for another day. But I just don't think people are talking about him. Now, I understand the season is going to be defined by what you do against Houston, what you do against Iowa State, what you do against Arizona. But when I talk about teams that I believe can go to a Final Four, can win a national championship, I just don't think people are talking about BYU as much as they should. The conversation is about DeBonsa, but this team is 13-1, only lost to UConn. And oh, by the way, I should mention this too. Shout out to Kevin Young. 50 games as a head coach in college basketball. He's now 39-11. Again, don't think people are talking about that enough. It is worth noting, by the way, as well, BYU, I believe, let me pull the stat really quick, because I believe BYU started last season 11-6, which means that he is now 24-5 in his last 29 games. BYU is really good. Let's give them some props. Very good team. Sad part is they don't play like a super significant Big 12 game here for a couple weeks. They do have to play at Utah, their big rival. But they get at Texas Tech a few weeks from now, and then it gets much tougher. That's when you get the Arizonas, at Kansas, Houston, on and on. Let's switch gears. Couple other notes from the weekend. By the way, Matt, I didn't send you this, but let me just spend half a second on it. Baylor TCU. The only reason I want to talk about this, TCU beats Baylor. It was the debut of James Najee, the former 31st overall pick in the 2023 NBA draft, okay? We don't have to spend a ton of time on this. He came off the bench, 16 minutes played, 5 points, 4 rebounds. Listen, two things can be true. I don't think he's very good, because if he was good enough, he would be playing in the NBA. By the way, BYU has one of those G League guys as well. He barely played. Now, I know the BYU guy is different. He was never drafted. I'm not trying to compare. What I'm trying to say is I think two things can be true. I think, one, most of these guys that have a professional background, they're not that good, or they would be in the NBA. But I also would counter by saying that I also think that why people are concerned, and I think it's justifiable, is the conversation about where does it end, right? If you're a college basketball fan, it's not about necessarily James Najee. It's about where does it end? The NCAA has said we're not going to let players who have played in the NBA play, but what if somebody sues? We have a guy now that was drafted playing in college basketball. So he had his debut. He's not very good. I don't think the story is if he's good or not. I think the story is the dude was the 31st pick in the draft. He's now playing college basketball. Let's get to some other results. I'll say this. Things are quickly going off the rails for St. John's. St. John's loses to Providence on Saturday at Madison Square Garden, 77-71. I had actually forgotten this, but Bryce Hopkins, who, of course, is the former, played at Kentucky, but he also played for 2 years at Providence. Last year was weird, and there was kind of like this insinuation that basically he was sitting out the season to protect his final year of eligibility, transfers to St. John's. Well, I just bring it up because it was the Providence revenge game against Bryce Hopkins, but this thing is just quickly going off the rails for St. John's. They are now 9-5 overall, 2-1 in the Big East. It's funny. I asked our Torres on SJU guy, basically like, did Pitino say anything interesting in the press conference? He said, no, Pitino's afraid to criticize this team because he knows how soft they are. And so, listen, story of the season. Portal misevaluations in some place, Kentucky, St. John's, but they lose to Providence at home. Listen, I still think the Big East is bad enough where they'll rack up wins and get into the tournament, but this was a consensus top 5 team coming into the season. They've been a dud. The Big East, by the way, kind of low-key needs them to be good. They haven't been. St. John's loses this game 77-71. In the ACC, we did a big segment right before Christmas break about North Carolina exceeding expectations. They open ACC play on the road at SMU. SMU gets the 97-83 win. Now, I know what people think I'm going to do, criticize Hubert. No, I'm not going to criticize Hubert Davis. I think SMU's good. Keep in mind, I live in LA, okay? I don't think people realize how good Andy Enfield is. Andy Enfield made an Elite Eight the year they had Evan Mobley. Every year they were in the tournament by the end. They were when the Pac-12 broke up, the clear third best team in the Pac-12 behind UCLA, Arizona, and those two schools get much more support than USC does in basketball. So I bring it up because I've always been an Enfield guy. I've always believed in them. They are now 12-2 and 1-0 in the ACC with a signature win. It's worth noting, if you remember last year, SMU, they were on the bubble. They had 0 quad one wins. They beat everybody they were supposed to. They couldn't get over the hump against good teams. So they get a quad one win here. I think it's going to carry weight. I think this speaks to the fact that the ACC just across the board is just much better than it's been. And so let's give credit to Andy Enfield. They're 12-2. Boopy Miller, who's been all over the place but is a very good college basketball player, was awesome in this game. For Carolina, I'm not going to freak out. It was just their second true road game. Their only other road game was against Kentucky at Rupp Arena. I think Carolina's going to be fine. I think they're a top 2, top 3 team in the ACC, but they take the loss to SMU. Credit to Andy Enfield and the boys there. Speaking of the ACC being deep, glasses half empty, glasses half full. Virginia goes to NC State and gets the win. Final score 76-61. Virginia, really good, 12-2. They lost that weird triple overtime game on New Year's Eve to Virginia Tech. But they go into NC State and get the victory. With NC State, I'll be real. I'm obviously a Will Wade guy. We've had Will Wade on the show a bunch. And I believe in Will Wade. And I believe that he is going to figure things out and get the job done. Probably not a great sign, though, that on Saturday, Keats was trending, as in Kevin Keats, as in this NC State season is going basically the exact same way as every NC State season has gone under Kevin Keats. 10-5, really no signature wins of note. They beat Ole Miss in the out-of-conference. Ole Miss is terrible. Beat Wake Forest to open ACC play. Wake Forest is fine. But obviously, look, Will Wade was a big name. It was a universally respected hire. And on top of everything else, spent a lot of money on that roster. Darian Williams, we know, was one of the top portal players and came with a big price tag. Terrence Arsenault, all these, there was a lot of money spent on this roster. So I think there is frustration with NC State fans. I think there should be. I am not necessarily ready to give up on this team because Wade always sort of figures it out. Wasn't great to start last year at McNeese State. I think that's easy to forget as well. They actually get their next 2 on the road at Boston College, at Florida State. 4 of their next 5 are on the road. They got to get some wins. I still think they're a tournament team, but right now, for whatever reason, it's just not clicking. The only other real results that I want to talk about very quickly, we did the Darren Peterson segment before Christmas break. Bill Self had that very vague, his parents are deciding, when he plays and when he doesn't. Well, Kansas goes to Central Florida. They lose to Central Florida 81-75. Listen, I have nothing to add here. We did a Darren Peterson segment. It's weird. I don't believe he's actively not trying to play because his NBA draft stock, I don't want to say it's tanking, but you could be the number 1 pick. You follow the 4th, 5th, 6th pick. All of a sudden, that's millions of dollars over the course of a contract. He's practicing too, which is the crazy part. But he played this game, 23 points in the first half, then only played 5 minutes in the second half. Bill Self said he's on a minutes restriction. Listen, Kansas fans have every right to be annoyed. We talked about it right before the break. I'm not going to do another full segment on this, but Kansas fans have a right to be frustrated. You know who doesn't have a right to be frustrated? The University of Michigan. Michigan basketball is a juggernaut. They beat USC by 30 on Friday night. Became the first team ever, by the way. First 3 ranked opponents that they faced. How about this? All 3 teams they have beaten by 30 plus. They beat Auburn by 30. They beat Gonzaga by 40. They beat USC, which was ranked number 24 on Friday, by 30. If they had played yesterday, we'd probably do a full segment on how dominant they are, but they are so good. Listen, I know we got a lot of Arizona fans. We got a lot of UConn fans. UConn plays on Sunday against Marquette. I think Michigan's by far the best team in college basketball. If that makes Arizona fans mad, UConn fans mad, that's fine. Michigan is such a freaking wagon. Matt, before we get out of here, any interesting questions, comments, thoughts from the chat? Could be football, could be basketball, could be whatever people's hearts desire. Get Acuff some consistent help, and we're unstoppable. This, of course, the Arkansas Razorbacks. Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I think they're figuring it out. I think Malik Thomas has been really good about the last 4 games of the season. Outside of him, I think Carter is starting to figure it out. Carter Knox. So I don't know. I listen. You just beat Tennessee. I think Tennessee is actually very, very, very good. So like I don't know that I'm like totally worried about Arkansas. But apparently Arkansas fans just want Darius Acuff to get more help. Darius Acuff is so good, though. Let's keep it going. Hogs for Life 81 says, does Kentucky miss Coach Cal yet? I'll let Kentucky fans answer that question. It's going to be a segment at some point if these 2 seasons keep going the way that they have. I am still of the belief it had run its course. I think, how do I say this? Cal, I think, sort of lost his way. I think he was listening too much to the media and the outside noise. I think he needed a hard reset. And you can just tell by his press conferences, my guy has his swag back. It worked out certainly well for Arkansas. We'll see what happens with Kentucky. I'm not ready to give up on Pope either. I know that's a controversial take after you lose by 1,000,000 points again. I know it was like 14 points, but it wasn't close. I think Pope just totally misevaluated this entire portal situation. He wanted to get way more athletic, and he sacrificed all of the things that have made his team successful. I'm not ready to give up on Pope, but Cal is the real deal. 1 or 2 more if we got him. I think it's safe to say Nate and Mark won't be playing 18 holes together anytime soon. Like I said, Nate Oates just has this way of, I don't think he intentionally says a lot of this stuff on purpose. Remember, like I said, he crushed Coach K in the media. And I remember, I don't think he'd mind me saying it because he apologized publicly, but I remember talking to him about that at some point, and he was just like, I didn't know it was going to be like that. So I don't know if it's the high school coach. He never dealt with media until he got to Alabama, whatever it is, but he does have a tendency to kind of just say stuff. And I could tell, that sound probably not going to go over well with Mark Pope. But hey, if you're Mark Pope, how about you just beat him once? 0 for 4 against Arkansas or against Kentucky. Kentucky is 0-4 against Nate Oates so far this year. Anything else, Matt, before we get out of here? Kentucky Big Blue fan, Tim Kentucky Big Blue fan says, you can say what you want about Pope, but Pope is not the guy. He had 5 seniors last year that played together. He can't get these guys to play together. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think that I am. Listen, I don't think that Mark Pope necessarily can't be the guy, but he's got to get guys that fit his system. And I think he went big game hunting into the portal. I think, let's be honest, I think he missed on a couple big names early and he started to panic. Missed on Donovan Dent. By the way, Donovan Dent and UCLA are not playing well. I actually think Donovan Dent, it's the weird thing where I think Donovan Dent would be better at Kentucky. Donovan Dent kind of needed Kentucky, and Kentucky kind of needed Donovan Dent. So maybe I'm crazy. The one thing I will say about Pope, though, I'm not worried about the schematics, even though I maybe should be. He's getting really weird with the media. It started in the Louisville game where he kind of insinuated something weird happened, but he wouldn't talk about it. I haven't heard the audio with Tom Leach yet, but he apparently was very short and disrespectful of Tom Leach, the longtime legendary Kentucky play-by-play guy. Do a lot of things in this world. You don't cross Tom Leach. Universally liked guy. I've been on Tom Leach's show a bunch. He's a great guy. You don't disrespect Tom Leach. And I'm not saying Mark Pope did, but I'm told that the audio is not very good. And it's not very good to be a Kentucky fan right now. Although, who knows? Maybe Kentucky's just a football school. Now, I tweeted it out on Saturday. I said, we're in a new world. Alabama fans want to talk nothing about their football team after the Rose Bowl. They only want to talk basketball. Kentucky fans only want to talk Will Stein and the football team. Man, if we got one more good one, then we'll go ahead and get out of here. We're at basically an hour and a half at this point. Are the starters' minutes for BYU a concern? Great question. I think that's the one thing, if you ask KY, and I have not talked to him, I think they'd probably like to develop a little bit of a better bench. But I also think in college basketball, you play 40 games. This is a big – Ben McCollum is the new Iowa coach, and they asked him, they're like, why do your starters play like 38 minutes? He's like, because they're young and they're good. And I don't know KY's exact stance on this situation. and maybe it's something I reach out to BYU and see what they have to say. I thought Boscovich gave him very good minutes on Saturday against Kansas State. Kadeem Boop didn't play for some reason that I'm unaware of. And I do think, I do think they brought in the G League kid because they wanted a true 5 they wanted a true backup at the 5 behind Kebakeda. So yeah, AJ, Richie, Saunders, Rob Wright are all playing a lot of minutes. I don't know that I'm worried yet, but I think it's an interesting point to bring up. Kennard Davis, who was obviously suspended for a few games, he's been back for a while now as well. All right. I'll tell you what. Maybe we go ahead and get out of here. We're at an hour and a half on a Sunday. NFL's about to kick off here in a minute. Week 18. Steelers-Ravens. Who's going to win that one? I don't know. But if you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres pod, make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. By the way, in the chat, we have started a daily college sports newsletter, NIL portal, all that good stuff. You want to be a friend, go ahead and subscribe to that. It's totally free. And I think it's going to be really fun for college sports fans because I think you're going to get a lot out of that on a daily basis. So make sure you're subscribed to that. Also, I did drop the link to my podcast from Fox Sports Radio. If you want to help me out there, do that. Just download it as well. And other than that, I think that's really it. I think we're going to go ahead and get out of here. It is Sunday. I have no voice, and I appreciate everybody tuning in. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, UFED. Awesome Sunday audience. We were hesitant to do it this early in the morning, but it is what it is. We appreciate your support of the Aaron Torres pod. We'll be back. By the way, remember, SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. Thank you to Circa Sportsbook. I will be at the Mint for March Madness. I hope some of you will join me. I know Kentucky fans, right now there's not a lot to cheer about, but I'll be at the Mint in March. And then finally, thank you to Cauley Puffs, who we did not get to, but CauleyPuffs.com, promo code Torres, gets you 15% off your first purchase. I got to run. Watch the NFL. Enjoy the games. Download all the pods. Be a friend. Shout out to Torrent Craig, Rachel, who hates my voice, JJ Reddick, UFED. I'll be back probably Tuesday morning. We'll see